I don't doubt that you know a lot about popular songs. Let's say you know all there is to know about popular songs. There is just one thing that you're overlooking, Ralph. You're going on a television show, a big television show. Millions of people are going to be looking at you.
What if one single TV moment was so shocking it ended a legendary show overnight? The Honeymooners changed comedy forever, but behind the laughs was a scene so controversial it was buried for decades. This is the truth they never wanted you to see. Gleason's real-life struggle sparked a sitcom revolution. Before the Honeymooners became a cultural landmark, it began in a place of pain. Jackie Gleason didn't just create Ralph Kramden, he lived with him. Raised in Brooklyn, Gleason knew poverty firsthand. His father walked out when Jackie was 9, leaving him with a mother who worked low-wage jobs just to survive. That abandonment never left him. It fueled the frustration and fire in Ralph Kramden's character, a loudmouth bus driver with dreams too big for his small paycheck. Gleason first introduced the Ralph Kramden character on The Cavalcade of Stars in 1951. The sketch was raw, loud, and unlike anything else on TV. While most shows idealized suburban life, Gleason gave audiences a rundown apartment, a yelling match between spouses, and a man who barely scraped by. It clicked. Alice Kramden, Ralph's no-nonsense wife, became just as iconic. But casting Alice wasn't simple. Audrey Meadows nearly missed the part. CBS executives thought she looked too glamorous. Determined, Meadows had new photos taken, wearing no makeup, dressed plainly. But few know that Meadows wasn't the original Alice. The role was first played by Pert Kelton. She brought edge and toughness to the part. However, midway through the show's rise, she was abruptly replaced. The public reason? Health issues. The real reason? Politics. Kelton's husband had been under investigation during the Red Scare. The whispers of communist ties were enough for CBS to pull the plug. Hollywood's blacklist had reached the Honeymooners. This political purge quietly altered the show's course. It replaced Kelton's brashness with Meadows' balance of warmth and wit. Some fans argue Kelton had more fire, but Meadows gave Alice heart, and that helped the show survive long past the blacklist era. This wasn't your typical shiny sitcom. The Honeymooners showed life as it really was, and America couldn't look away. Why the Honeymooners changed TV forever. When the Honeymooners spun off into a standalone show in 1955, it broke the mold. At a time when America's airwaves were filled with clean-cut families and manicured homes, Gleason offered a loud, cramped apartment and a married couple constantly on the verge of ecloding. There were no manicured lawns, no happy-go-lucky kids, just bills, busted dreams, and shouted threats of "one of these days, Alice," bang, zoom. For the first time, television made working-class life the centerpiece. Ralph Kramden wasn't rich. He wasn't wise. He wasn't even successful. He was flawed, just like the people watching. That was the genius. Viewers saw themselves. Men stuck in thankless jobs. Wives holding families together. Couples arguing, forgiving, and starting over. The Honeymooners didn't sugarcoat life. It put it under a spotlight. Before this, sitcoms like Father Knows Best or Leave It to Beaver painted a soft focus version of life. They offered polished dads with wise advice and homes with multiple bedrooms. The Honeymooners gave us a single-room apartment, peeling wallpaper, and a kitchen table that doubled as a battlefield for dreams and disappointments. Gleason's stage background shaped the show's rhythm. Each episode played like a short play, live, no retakes. The scripts were tight, dialogue sharp, pacing relentless. It felt real. Gleason, who had honed his craft in vaudeville and live theater, demanded that energy. You could feel the tension in every line. No laugh track was needed. The audience laughed because the jokes hit hard and the emotion felt honest. The format helped, too. Each episode was self-contained. No ongoing story arcs. You didn't need to watch week after week. Drop in for a single episode and you got a full story with real emotion and strong punchlines. And then there were the catchphrases. "To the moon, Alice! Baby, you're the greatest." These weren't just lines, they were cultural stamps. They echoed in workplaces, homes, and even political speeches. Everyone knew them. They became part of American language. The show's influence didn't end with laughs. It laid the groundwork for shows like All in the Family, Roseanne, and The Simpsons. Without the Honeymooners, there's no Archie Bunker, no Homer Simpson. Gleason cracked open the door for messy families, honest fights, and laughs that came from real places. What really happened that night? The night the scene aired, no one knew it would change TV history. It wasn't graphic, it wasn't profane, but it crossed a line that had been quietly drawn in early American broadcasting. The episode in question, The Deciding Vote, aired in October 1956. On the surface, it seemed like a regular episode. Ralph, convinced his one vote can change the election, ends up facing public humiliation. But it was one unscripted moment that changed everything. During a heated exchange between Ralph and Alice, Gleason delivered his usual bang, zoom, straight to the moon line. But this time, it wasn't played for laughs. His body language, his tone, it didn't feel like a joke anymore. The live studio audience went silent. Even the crew backstage reportedly froze. For the first time, Ralph didn't seem like a lovable loudmouth. He seemed threatening. TV critics called it too real. Audiences wrote in, not laughing, but concerned. It stirred controversy around domestic abuse being played for laughs. While the line had always been part of the show, this delivery stripped it of its comic shell. What most people don't know is that the scene was only part of the problem. CBS executives were already concerned about the direction of the show. Ratings were dipping slightly, the energy seemed off, and Gleason was increasingly unpredictable during live tapings. This scene just confirmed their fears. Behind the scenes, tensions were boiling. Audrey Meadows had quietly expressed discomfort with how some scenes were shot, especially when lines blurred between comedy and emotional aggression. The episode's emotional weight and Gleason's unscripted intensity forced CBS to act fast. While they never publicly admitted it, several producers later hinted that they received a call from upstairs to shut it down. It was a decision made quickly, behind closed doors. Just weeks later, The Honeymooners ended its original 39-episode run. Another overlooked piece of the puzzle was the pressure from advertisers. Some sponsors feared backlash from families, churches, and women's groups. They didn't want their products associated with a show that seemed to make light of violence, even if unintentional. One major sponsor threatened to pull out. That was the final nail. The truth is, it wasn't just one line that ended The Honeymooners. It was a storm of decisions, warnings, and a culture that was slowly shifting. That one scene just happened to light the fuse. What happened after the lights went out? After the abrupt end, The Honeymooners vanished from prime time. But the fallout was far from over. Fans were confused. CBS released no official explanation. One day it was on, the next it was gone. But behind the scenes, the fallout was loud. Gleason didn't take the cancellation lightly. He wasn't just the star, he was the creator, the heart of the show. He poured parts of himself into Ralph Cramden. The character wasn't just a role, it was a mirror. The cancellation felt personal. In interviews later, Gleason admitted the pressure of doing the show live each week wore him down. He wanted to make each moment perfect, but the demand was nonstop. Most people are unaware that Gleason did not entirely abandon The Honeymooners. For a performer in the 50s, he silently purchased back the rights from CBS. He brought the characters from sketches on his variety shows back to life over the next 2 decades, usually running across Meadows and Art Carney. Later episodes had longer run times, softer, more sentimental quality, and more sensitivity. They never, however, caught the raw vitality of the first 39. Audrey Meadows, meantime, turned her attention to another career route. She stopped acting after The Honeymooners, concentrating on business and rising to be among the first women seated on the board of a big company, Consolidated Savings and Loan. Her real strength on and off screen was demonstrated by her capacity to walk away from performing at her peak. Playing Norton, Art Carney did better than most. For his performance in Harry and Tonto in 1974, he received an Academy Award. He then worked for decades more. He stayed close friends with Gleason, but their professional routes hardly ever crossed once more. Public response to the cancellation of the show was a mix of nostalgia and uncertainty. Though CBS remained silent, viewers wanted responses. Fan letters came flooding in the next few years. Reruns drew fresh attendees. People recalled the laughter, the vitality, the realism. Still, Hollywood continued forward. The sudden end of the show also meant that networks were changing what they would show live. It made executives rethink the influence of tone. Comedies grew more polished and less dangerous after The Honeymooners. Control and editing took front stage over the raw, erratic character of live TV comedy. In the following years, Gleason focused on his variety shows, but The Honeymooners always had a big place in his heart. What seemed like harmless comedy actually crossed a dangerous line, and it nearly cost The Honeymooners everything. Gleason's second attempt. Once The Honeymooners' original run was over, Jackie Gleason didn't just let it go away into TV history. Instead, he worked to get the magic back. It wasn't quite the same, though, on the second try. In the 1960s, Gleason brought back The Honeymooners for his new show, The Jackie Gleason Show, which was based in Miami. There were new Honeymooners sketches in this comeback, but they weren't quite as good as the originals. The structure first changed in a big way. Early episodes of The Honeymooners were short, sharp, and powerful. But when Gleason came back in the 1960s, episodes got longer. Sometimes they were hours long. The original approach was less tight, and the humor seemed less connected to the situation. These new color episodes were filmed with clean sets and bright lights. The show lost the raw, working-class feel that made the original so popular as it became more commercialized. The cast went through yet another change. When Gleason, Art Carney, and Audrey Meadows came back, the chemistry had changed. Gleason was older, and his work in the 1950s had less of a spark. Even though Carney and Gleason didn't have as much chemistry naturally, Norton stayed the same funny fool. There were some brilliant moments in the revival, but it just didn't have the timing and energy of the original show. The choice to film Rebirth in Miami was based on both money and creativity. Gleason had made a deal with CBS that gave him full control over the show. Because of its tax breaks and manufacturing incentives, Miami was a good choice for businesses. He tried to copy what made the first show special, but he could never get the same lightning in a bottle. The first Honeymooners were intense because of the time, the cast, and the fact that they were shown on live TV. Once that was taken away, the revival couldn't match the rawness of the first one. Why The Honeymooners still matters. The Honeymooners only had one season, but it had a big impact on a lot of people. There were 39 episodes at first, and TV stations showed them for decades, making them a regular part of American homes. The Honeymooners were respected over time, not just remembered. In fact, The Honeymooners became an important part of American culture. The problems that the average American family faces were shown in a way that had never been seen on another show. Ralph Cramden wasn't a perfect citizen or husband, but that was part of its beauty. He was someone that people could relate to. While Norton's silly antics provided much-needed humor, Alice's sharp mind and wit balanced Ralph's big hopes and ongoing disappointments. The show's simple structure, with only 4 main characters, and most of the action happening in a small Brooklyn apartment, was a big deal. It showed that a sitcom could work without a big cast or a complicated setting. It only needed a real family, honest dialogue, and actors who looked and acted like real people. The Honeymooners did more than just become popular quickly. As time went on, many other sitcoms took ideas from the show. Ralph and Alice Cramden gave the Flintstones ideas for Fred and Wilma, whose relationship was based on the main couples. One more show that The Simpsons used to get ideas for Homer and Marge's relationship was The Honeymooners. The simplicity of the structure, emphasizing the daily lives of working-class families, turned into a model for later shows. But The Honeymooners' integrity was its true legacy, not only in form. The show didn't sugarcoat the hard parts of being an American family rebuilding after the war. Ralph was often angry and irritable, but that didn't change how much he loved his wife. The show talked about real problems of the time, like money problems and hopes for a better life, while keeping the humor and warmth. The difficulties the Cramdens faced seemed real. They were real people because Ralph's temper, Alice's sharp rebuffs, and the constant juggling of dreams and reality made them so. Like millions of other family shows, this one only showed a couple trying their best. It didn't teach any morals. For TV, the working-class hero was something new. Before The Honeymooners, most sitcoms showed families with everything: big houses, fancy cars, and lovely kids. The Honeymooners were different, though. It showed Ralph Cramden, a bus driver, who always wanted a better life for himself and his wife, but never got it. In that way, the show showed a real human weakness that had never been seen on TV before. Ralph wasn't a millionaire or a businessman. He was just an average guy trying to make it through life. That made him and the show interesting in a way that many other TV families didn't. The infamous scene that shook the Honeymooners. The scene that finally led to the end of the Honeymooners is still one of the most talked-about moments in TV history. In the 1950s, it was shocking, but now it wouldn't be seen as outrageous or scandalous. Families gathered around the TV to watch family-friendly shows at a time when TV was still finding its voice. But The Honeymooners was different. It wasn't trying to fit that mold, and that difference sometimes got it in a lot of trouble. The famous scene took place in The $99,000 Answer. In this episode, Ralph Cramden, played by Jackie Gleason, jokes with his wife Alice that he's going to send her to the moon. Given how rude the show was and how people behaved at the time, the line was taken as more than just a joke, even though it seems harmless now. A lot of people were upset because they saw the line as a metaphor for domestic violence. Even though the point of the line was to be funny, many people saw much darker meanings in it because Ralph was mad that he wasn't succeeding. At that time, TV didn't talk about domestic violence very often. In fact, a lot of the problems we think are important now, like abuse, mental health issues, poverty, etc., were either not talked about at all or were barely touched upon in popular culture. In this part of The Honeymooners, Ralph's words seemed to show a darker side of his personality, which went against that norm. Suddenly, the show, which had been praised for showing what it's like to be working class, became part of a national debate about how TV affects ideas about relationships and gender roles. Because of the response, important talks took place behind the scenes. Even though pushing limits had always made him happy, Gleason found that he had to face the fact that, at least in this case, not all limits should be pushed. Producers, sponsors, and even the network had something to say. That being said, The Honeymooners was very popular, but the response to this scene made them rethink the rest of the show. The Honeymooners were finally thrown out of the sky. The choice was affected by many things, such as the shift in societal values. But the debate over this controversial scene was without a doubt a turning point. It was a turning point that marked the end of an era for the show and showed how people's views on TV and gender roles were changing. While The Honeymooners was innovative in many ways, this event served as a sobering reminder that even the most forward-thinking shows had limits, especially when it came to sensitive topics. The scene in question had effects that went beyond The Honeymooners. It got people ready for the future of TV, where shows that deal with controversial topics would be closely looked at. In many ways, it paved the way for sitcoms like All in the Family in the 1970s, which would deal with tough issues in more complex ways, and pushed the limits even further. It also made people more aware of how TV affected their views and led to more important conversations about how men and women interact in relationships. What came next proved Gleason's genius didn't fade. He transformed failure into lasting influence across American television. How the Honeymooners came to be revered. It's crazy to think about how the Honeymooners, whose controversy led to a quick end, became a cultural icon in the years that followed. At first, it was too rough and edgy for its time, but what became the gold standard for sitcoms changed everything, including how characters interact with each other and how sitcoms are structured. Even though the show was only on for one season, it has had an impact on many generations. As reruns of The Honeymooners began to air on local stations years after the show ended, it found a whole new group of viewers. The show's honest, unfiltered humor stayed relevant, and things that seemed controversial at first now seemed new and interesting. Late in the 1960s and early in the 1970s, The Honeymooners found a second life. This time, it was seen as the foundation of American television. This change in view may have been caused by how well it captured the core of the American experience. It wasn't just Alice's unwavering patience or Ralph's crazy plans. It was about the problems that everyone faces every day, and how annoying it is for the average Joe to try to get by in a world that doesn't always give him a break. The Honeymooners didn't waste any time showing how messy life can be. That was a big part of what made it appealing. As TV changed, people started to want shows that felt more real and didn't always show the perfect family relationship. There are many ways that The Honeymooners set the stage for a new era of TV. Over time, it became very clear that The Honeymooners was a sign of what was to come in sitcoms, less lighthearted, more realistic portrayals of family life. All in the Family and The Mary Tyler Moore Show took ideas from The Honeymooners for how to deal with real issues, like marriage and politics. One way to understand the success of these shows is to look at what The Honeymooners did before them. Ralph Cramden was a character for all time, not just one from his time. This is shown by the fact that the show's themes of ambition and class have had a big impact on later TV stars. The constant love for The Honeymooners also shows how timeless the people in it are. The problems Ralph and Alice Cramden had, the happiness they felt when they shared dreams, and the silliness of their daily fights are still felt today. In an age of reality TV and characters that seem too good to be true, The Honeymooners reminded viewers that simple things can be beautiful. The legendary events from The Honeymooners, the jokes, the physical comedy, and the way the characters interacted with each other changed the way sitcoms were made in the future. The part where Ralph says he's going to send Alice to the moon might have been controversial back then, but now it's seen as a sign of a time when TV was still figuring out what was funny and what was okay in public. The Honeymooners' influence on modern TV. Even though their run was short, The Honeymooners cast a long shadow over TV shows. It had a huge effect on sitcoms. It was one of the first shows to show that it was okay to have real, flawed characters on TV, which led to a whole generation of TV shows. When it started in 1955, the show was more than just a comedy. It was also an experiment to see how people would react to characters who weren't like the perfect people on so many other shows at the time. Ralph Cramden, played by Jackie Gleason, was a loud and sometimes over-the-top working-class man who dreamed of a better life most of the time. Alice, Ralph's patient wife, was also real. Even though she wasn't perfect, she was always trying to keep up with Ralph's crazy plans. The reason people liked them, even though they weren't the perfect couple overall, was because of this. People could relate to Ralph's frustrations, his goals, and his less-than-perfect attempts to reach those goals. This show gave people from the working class a voice, and since then, sitcoms have been echoing that. Beginning with sitcoms in the 1970s, The Honeymooners had a big effect. All in the Family, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and even The Simpsons are to thank for how easy it was to watch character-driven comedy on The Honeymooners. It wasn't the point of these shows to show perfect, well-behaved families. They were meant to show the real, messy side of life. They showed viewers real people, not just cartoon characters who struggled with relationships, jobs, and ambition just like everyone else. Today, comedies like The Office and Parks and Recreation are still very much influenced by The Honeymooners. These shows are a lot like The Honeymooners in that they both show everyday problems and strange characters. However, their style and tone are very different. Many modern sitcom characters like Ralph and Alice have big dreams, get pretty mad at small things that don't go their way, and make mistakes along the way. The show also changed how sitcoms were put together. The Honeymooners didn't follow the typical pattern of sitcoms at the time. Instead, they used a more flexible structure that let for bigger, more character-driven arcs. This was different from the usual simple one-off episodes, and it made it possible for deeper, more complex stories that became the basis for modern sitcoms. The Honeymooners was one of the first shows to combine comedy with serious social commentary in a way that worked. It was innovative, not just because of its funny characters or plot. Ralph's ongoing dissatisfaction with his job, his lack of money, and his unfulfilled hopes were part of a larger cultural conversation about the American dream and the struggles of the working class. In many ways, the show was ahead of the social realism that became more common on TV in the 1970s and decades after. The Honeymooners were great because they were able to stay funny and current, while also talking about serious issues like marriage, class, and ambition. Ralph's flaws, anger, selfishness, and desperation were always shown on the show, but it did so in a way that made him seem like a real person. Not only was The Honeymooners a comedy, it was also an important part of culture because it changed the way characters were shown on TV. The enduring appeal of The Honeymooners. It's almost hard to believe that a show as groundbreaking as The Honeymooners had such a short run. Despite airing only for one season in 1955, the show has become an integral part of television history. What was once considered controversial for its depiction of a working-class couple has transformed into a cult classic. The show's legacy continues to resonate decades later, and it's now widely regarded as one of the most important sitcoms ever made. So, what is it about The Honeymooners that makes it endure? Part of it is the show's relatability. While the world has changed dramatically since the 1950s, the struggles Ralph and Alice face, working hard to get by, navigating a marriage that's full of ups and downs, and trying to improve their lives, are timeless. These are struggles that every generation can relate to, and it's that relatability that has helped the show remain relevant through the years. Another factor in The Honeymooners' enduring appeal is its characters. Jackie Gleason's portrayal of Ralph Cramden remains one of the most iconic TV performances of all time. Ralph's flaws, his larger-than-life personality, and his often diluted sense of grandeur make him a character that viewers can't help but love, even when they're laughing at his expense. Alice, played by Audrey Meadows, is the perfect foil to Ralph, offering a grounded, sensible presence that balances out his wild antics. Together, they form one of the most beloved TV couples of all time. The physical comedy, too, has a timeless quality. Jackie Gleason's slapstick humor and his ability to play off the other characters helped define the show's tone and style. Even as television evolved, the classic comedic moments, whether it was Ralph's signature "to the moon" line or his absurd plans to get rich quick, continue to be funny today, decades after they first aired. It's that combination of relatable characters, physical comedy, and timeless themes that has ensured The Honeymooners' place in TV history. The show's enduring appeal is also a reflection of its ability to stand the test of time. While many shows from the 1950s have faded into obscurity, The Honeymooners has remained a cultural touchstone. It has inspired countless references in pop culture, from movies to other TV shows, and it continues to be celebrated in reruns, streaming services, and even special anniversary events. In a world where TV shows come and go with lightning speed, The Honeymooners stands as a testament to the power of timeless characters and universal themes. Its ability to connect with audiences, even decades after its cancellation, speaks to its status as a cultural icon. Over the years, the popularity of The Honeymooners has given rise to numerous revivals, adaptations, and tributes, showcasing its lasting impact on TV. From Broadway adaptations to movie versions, The Honeymooners continues to inspire new generations of creators who see it as a model of what television can achieve. It shows that even after a show is gone, its influence can still be felt, and its legacy can continue to grow. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen for more amazing content.